Good morning, everybody. This is Matt Scarborough from Bicycle Accident Law. I'm super excited to have on the podcast today Zach Morris. Zach is a very accomplished athlete, coach, and entrepreneur who I've had the gift of getting to know a little bit on, of all things, Instagram. And we were discussing the importance of what a driver should think about when they see a cyclist. And we're going to get into that. But first of all, Zach, if you don't mind kind of telling us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks, Matt, and thanks for the invite onto the show. I think this is a topic that's quite close to my heart and is very important to me. I think, like most cyclists, I spend a lot of time on the road, and so it's something you come face to face with every single day. And so when you asked me to come on the show, it was a really quick yes. Any opportunity to get across to other athletes around, the perspective that maybe they should consider or some different perspective options that they should consider when being out on the road. And then an opportunity to maybe connect with just anybody who gets behind the wheel of a car and may come across a rider is a good opportunity and a good investment of time on my end, because who knows, it might save my own life one day.
Yeah.
So, my origin story is, I mean, it's a long one, right? But I've been a cyclist since I was a kid, right? My dad and my uncle, my dad's older brother, grew up racing and riding, and so from the time I was 5, 6 years old, I was sitting in the house spinning their cranks backwards on that old indoor trainer because I wanted to be out there riding and doing what they were doing, and so I think I did my first competitive race when I was like 11 years old, and those were my weekends when I was a kid, was getting out there and trying to ride my little kid's bike up the steepest hills that my dad and my uncle were talking about taking on, and doing fast times up and so on and so forth, and racing each other on. And so, getting out on the road and being a cyclist it's just who I am. It's every bit of my DNA. And so while I've had different levels of commitment to the sport as an athlete myself throughout the years, I've always been a cyclist in my heart, right? So I did go on to race at a fairly high level. I raced all the way to, like, France has these different divisions, and right below pro in France is called Division One.
Right.
And I think now we refer to Division One as like World Tour. So I raced Division One in France, which is not the highest level. It's basically one level down from what we consider now the World Tour. And I made it all the way to that level. I left the sport really on some tough luck and a lack of information and resources at that time,
Mm.
and came full circle as an entrepreneur after kind of, yeah, doing a lot of different things in my life. I became a trainer, and then I became somebody who wanted to do more in training, and so I started up a supplement company with a couple of doctors and a lawyer, and built a sports science company, and
Okay.
exited that company, and moved around the world, and did a lot of things, and came full circle in the sport of cycling, where I kind of reached a point when I was 29 years old. And I know it sounds young, right? But I needed to reinvent myself. I was going through a really hard time personally. I was actually going through a divorce, and I needed
Okay.
to reinvent who I was as a person. And my bike was there for me again in my life. I hadn't touched my bike for 8 years, right? But I
Wow.
needed I
Wow.
needed to get on that bike. And so I jumped back on it, and I started riding. I was doing crazy things. I was doing 200-kilometer rides, getting out there every single day, minimum 3, 4 hours. And something came over me, and I was like, you know what? I want to race again. I want to go race, and I want to get back to the world tour, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to be 29
Okay.
years old, and I'm going to get after it. Right. And it
Right.
was really just something to occupy my mind at that time. And it provided me with this platform just to get out there every single day and reinvent myself and overcome a lot of these different things that I was going through on a personal level, and reconnecting with who I was. And whether it was 4 o'clock in the morning and I was getting out there and getting after it with the boys, or 5 p.m. at night, it didn't matter. I was on my bike every day, and I was conquering those inner demons. And after a few months, I started to jump in races, and I did all the big crits in the US, and
Okay.
had a lot of fun doing that. And then I went back to Canada, and I won basically the biggest crit in Canada, which is Criterium National in Quebec. And that for me was like such a day of overcoming and accomplishment because like all year I had gotten my butt kicked. Here I was, 8 years off the
Right.
sport,
Yeah.
right? 8 years out of the sport, coming back, racing the best guys. These guys have been doing it steady for the last 10 years straight, just knocking out these criteria. They're the best in the world at crits, right? And
Right.
so the end of the year, last race of the year, I win the big one. And that kind of led me down an interesting kind of path where I was like, okay, I need to take this a little bit more seriously, and I'm actually really going to go pro again. I'm going to do this, and so I partnered up with a local coach, and I started working with this coach because my whole background is in fitness and training, and my entire life, like both my younger brothers are pro athletes. My dad was one of the first guys in Canada to bench press. I don't know if it was 500 or 600 pounds, but it was one of those records.
Okay.
And
Right.
so my whole life is sports and training and training people and helping people, improve. And so I wanted to work with somebody who I could bounce ideas off of. And so I partnered up with a local coach, and he had this really a lot of passion. And I had basically been out of the entrepreneurial game for like a couple of years. After I had gone through my separation there, I left a lot of the things that I was working on behind and was looking for something new. And so I got involved in helping this person build out their coaching business. And we took that
Hmm.
business from like 40 or 50 athletes to 500 athletes in just 2 years.
My
And
goodness.
so it was an incredible kind of breakthrough there. And I exited that partnership and took a little bit of time and actually um, stopped racing after about a year of doing it again, right? So I got into this partnership. I took on training at an even higher level and more
Okay.
commitment. And then I realized, you know what? I'm not really trying to like do this. Like I don't really want to like race pro at the highest level. Like I'm 31 or 30 at this time. And I'm like,
Right.
I really love my life. Like everything's great. And to go down that hole of being that pro athlete, man, it's hard. It's so,
Yes.
so hard. There's so much discipline, so much hard work, so much sacrifice, so much tunnel vision. And you really have to want that with every ounce of blood in your body if you're going to get it. And I was just kind of at a point in my life where I was like, you know what? I really love this building business and like helping people and doing things on this side of things more than anything else. And really a
Hmm.
lot of that fulfillment was coming from seeing people and building systems that helped people transform their lives and seeing an impact that you can have in somebody's life who's 45 years old, who was going through what I went through when I was 29. That process of reinventing myself out there on that road every single day, right? People of all
Right.
shapes and sizes and backgrounds are solving problems through um, pushing themselves on their bikes every day. And that's a really beautiful thing. And so to be able to help people do that was just like, it felt like this huge gift. And so after I left that company, I had a DM from the CEO of EF Pro Cycling on Instagram, JV. He said, "Hey man,
Okay.
I have been watching you and I saw what you did over there. Do you want to partner with us on building out this new coaching business, Team EF coaching?"
And let
And
me
so
stop you
that,
there. Let me
yeah,
stop
sorry.
you there for a second. So I know who JV is, but for those
Yeah.
of people that don't follow pro cycling like I do, tell us who JV is.
So, I mean, where to start? There's so many sides of
Yeah.
JV. He's a really interesting person. He
Hmm.
was a professional cyclist in his time, one of the best in the
Yep.
world. Finished, I think he finished top 10 in the Tour de France. But was just an incredibly talented guy. Went through the dark era of sport and openly talks about that now, and has been involved in a lot of change in the sport. And so he's an interesting, complex individual, but today he is the CEO of EF Pro Cycling, and he's really responsible for a lot of innovation in the sport. Cycling is a very traditional sport, and even the company, Team EF Coaching, my company, today is a good example of that innovation. We are the only cycling coaching or coaching company at all on the planet that has access to the sports science team of, you know, a team at the highest level of any sport, whether it's,
That's
Formula One,
amazing.
we're cycling, right? So it is just another extension of JV and his innovation and being open to that partnership and actually initiating that idea is just, again, it's an extension of who he is and how he thinks. So he's a really special guy. Um, and so I got this DM, right? And we
Mhm.
went through the process of getting this company kind of kicked off and started. And Really as an entrepreneur, it's really hard to balance things sometimes. You can get pulled into so many different directions, right? And so I really have to stay in check with myself as an athlete, because when I'm in check as an athlete, everything else seems to go better. And about last year, I had gotten myself into a pretty deep work tunnel where the only
Mhm.
things that were important to me were, working and like growing the business and
Yeah.
um, uh, having meetings with other entrepreneurs that were in the city. And like, I was really just focused on this. And I had gained like 30 or 40 pounds. And it was just bad, dude. Like, I was going to the gym, I was lifting weights, but like, I wasn't riding a lot. I'd go out for a ride
Right.
once or twice a week. Right. And so I said, you know what? Like, this is not cool. Like, I need to reconnect with who I am. I need to get focused again, to get aligned. And
Yep.
so we have these camps at Team EF Coaching where we take people to these world tour races. So Strade Bianchi, Lombardia, we do Paris Roubaix, we do Tour of Flanders. We have these
Mhm.
really cool camps where we take anybody who's involved in our coaching program from all ability levels, wherever they're coming from around the world, and we take them to the race where they can do a Grand Fondo. And for those that
Oh, it's
don't know,
all
a Grand Fondo is like a public event where amateur riders can ride the same course as the pros. And
yeah.
so we host these really cool events. And one of the events we had was Strade Bianchi. And I was like, you know what? I want to get in shape. I want to win Strade Bianchi, the Fondo.
No way.
And
Okay.
dude, that was
I
that
mean,
was my goal.
that's like a dream event for me to do. Yeah, but go
You,
ahead.
you have to come. They're honestly so fun.
Mhm.
So here I was, 40 pounds overweight and way off of like competitive shape. And I was just like, you know what? Like, I have all of anybody in the world. I have all of the resources to do the most incredible transformation and try to pull this off. And
Right.
I had 16 weeks, right?
16 weeks, 4 months.
16 weeks, 4 months.
Yeah.
So week by week, I just started like sharing stuff on Instagram, and it was kind of, fun because I had some different, high level athletes come down, like, Annemiek van Vleuten, who had just won the Giro d'Italia, Tour de France, and Vuelta a España, come down and do an altitude camp with me and train with me down here in Medellin, Colombia. And so a lot of kind of cool things were happening while I started to take on this transformative challenge, and a lot of
Sure.
kind of buzz started to kind of create itself. And all of a sudden, Instagram for me just started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was became this amazing platform to share what I was doing and to inspire people to get out there and get after it. So 16 weeks went by really quick. I didn't win
Right.
Strade Bianchi. I actually got crashed out by Mario Cipollini, of all people.
Of all people. Wow.
Yeah. So I still finished seventh in my category, which was great. But at the end of the day, I crossed the finish line and I said, dude, I did 300 watts, so 4.5 watts per kilo for 4 hours on
Wow.
16
Wow.
weeks training, and lost almost 40 pounds and completely transformed who I was. And the funny thing around me was that everything in my life was operating better through this act, even though I was focusing a little bit less on the work and
Mhm.
more on the training, everything was operating more smoothly. And so that for me was another one of those moments in my life where it was just like game changing moment. I
Right.
need to stay checked into who I am as an athlete to perform well in all levels. And by doing that, look at what the universe gave me. It gave me this platform to meet people like you who have a podcast where I can come on and talk about, hopefully we'll get there. Stop talking about me,
Uh,
road safety and keeping
yeah.
people safe on their bikes and
Mhm.
sharing, perspective and having that common bond of, you know, pursuing advancement in life and personal growth and being better. And so cycling is that community where you just are able to connect with so many amazing people. And that's kind of full circle, where I'm at. Today I did win national championships last year. I continued that streak and I went on and I did a bunch of other stuff. But you know,
Awesome.
that was the kind of breaking moment where it was, okay, back full circle, stay checked in as an athlete. That supports being an entrepreneur, and is what gives us or gives me the platform to communicate with everybody and people like you. So
That's such
that's
a
really
wonderful story. I think all of us that are kind of lifelong cyclists had this experience as a kid. Maybe we did some racing in college. Like me, I did mountain biking racing right after I got out of law school. And I quickly realized, oh my God, I'm terrible at that. I need to stick to my day job as a lawyer. But
Right.
always come back to cycling, honestly, more for the mental benefit of it than anything else. And it seems like you're kind of telling the same thing, without giving away any trade secrets, kind of what is your process through cycling to kind of mentally become a better entrepreneur? Because I think my audience, we're all trying to do that. How do we use cycling as a tool to better our lives without crushing ourselves? You know what I mean?
Matt, it's one of those things. I don't have any secrets.
Right.
I share it all because whatever I learned today, I'm evolving on tomorrow. Really I see it that way. And so whatever I can share along the way that will help somebody else pick up from wherever they are and add to their life and get further along, we all win, right? We're all connected one way or another. And so, my process is pretty straightforward. Okay, when I say pretty straightforward, I'm pretty dialed on like the nutrition and the workouts and all of these things I need to do to increase my performance. That is my profession, right? So I'm
Sure.
dialed there. But the things that I do that make a big difference are reading. I listen to, and I wouldn't say reading, I'd say listening to audiobooks. Last year I did, like over an audiobook a week on my long training rides. So every
Wow.
time I get out there, if I'm not doing hard intervals, it's not music. I'm listening to audiobooks and I'm trying to learn something and download some perspective from somebody else who was further along in a certain perspective that I'm interested in learning now that I can gain and learn that information from. And so whether it's audiobooks or podcasts, for me, those resources really help shape advanced levels of perspective around how I see the world and how I want to interact with the world and what kind of leader I want to be for my team and what kind of example I want to be for the community and how I want to approach all scenarios that life throws at us. And so I'd say that is a really critical part of my growth process is really trying to just learn something every single week. Like I really bit off more than I can chew this year, and I started taking these courses at Harvard on human genetics and advanced physiology, and the reason why is just because I was never a good student when I was younger, but now I'm so eager to learn and so eager to advance because I think that that's what we're here to do is to grow and share and enjoy life. And the more knowledge and information you have access to, the higher levels of the universe that you can see. This is my perspective, right? The more you can really understand and the more you can interact and communicate and share bonds with people on a really special level. And so that's a big part of it. The second part of it is really maintaining balance in those things. And for me, balance comes down to expectations that you put on yourself. And so I understand that I cannot, like last year when I was preparing for Worlds, I managed, to pull up some form. I only had 3 weeks to really get ready for Worlds, and I managed a ninth place at Worlds, and I understand that I can't dedicate that level of commitment all year if I want to maintain balance throughout my
Right.
life, right? And so it's really easy to accept that your form, your top level form is gonna come and go throughout the year, and that's fine. It's not something you beat yourself up about. You can take it back whenever you want to, but it's a matter of trading these levels of expectations off with yourself at different times throughout the year. Okay, I know that there are certain times of the year where my business is going to be priority. And there are certain times of the year where family is going to be priority. And there are certain
Right.
times of the year where it's all in, no sacrifices, no excuses. It's all in on training. And that's all good. And balancing the different levels of effort that you put behind your cycling and your sport throughout those different cycles of the year is a really critical part of making it all work. And I think that's something I've been really fortunate to find a high level of balance in over the course of the last 2 years, especially.
Very good. So let's switch gears a little bit. The reason why you and I connected was over cyclist safety, and you were about to make a video on it. Kind of what message would you like to share with everyone, both cyclists and motorists? Because we all drive cars and ride bikes. Like, what do you want to tell everybody about your concerns and kind of if you're a driver of an automobile, what should they be thinking about?
So I thought about this. When we originally, set up this call, you said, Zach, it'd be great if you could, give us some tips on things we can do to stay safe. And while I have all the tips, right? Like, okay, you need to be aware, you need to, put your head on a swivel, you need to become a better bike handler, you need to wear bright clothes, ride with lights, do all the things that we've all heard a million times.
Sure.
While I can give you all the tips, a great part of me feels a huge sense of defeat. And I'll tell you why. Because the people that we have problems with on the road are the hardest people on the planet to communicate with. We're dealing with the ignorant and the aggressive. And there are many types of ignorant people on the planet. I'm ignorant to many things. I don't know how to build spaceships, but I'm not aggressive to the spaceship builder on their rocket ship designs, right?
Right.
But for some reason, aggressive drivers who are ignorant to what we're doing as cyclists don't share that same level of um I don't know, easygoingness, let's say, when they approach that situation. I'm not going to tell the rocket scientist how to build the rocket, and the driver who doesn't understand cyclists shouldn't tell the cyclist how to ride on the road, right? So a part
Right.
of me feels this really big sense of defeat because no matter how good of a bike rider you are, we see professional riders who I can't even begin to describe the level of skill difference in a pro rider and somebody who
Ugh,
just does it for fun, right? Like
sure.
their bikes are an extension of their body. They move their bikes like they move their fingers. It's that much of an intimate connection, and they
Mhm.
still get hit by cars and they still get killed every year. And so I think the issue we face as a community of cyclists is much bigger. It's the biggest issue on the planet. It's the issue of education and communication. And I think that if more drivers understood that, first of all, cyclists have every right to use the road. And I know it sounds cheesy, but cyclists have every right to use the road. We all contribute to the same systems, right? And in most cases, the people on bikes are your lawyers and your doctors and your professional athletes and people who are contributing a lot to the public systems, right? We have every right to use that road the same way the cars do. We don't go on the
100%.
highways because that's prohibited.
Most people don't know this, but it's a constitutional right in the United States. It's
Absolutely.
that level. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, thank you. And so that for me, in a lot of ways, is heartbreaking. It really is because, every single day we want to go out there as riders and we want to work on one thing. We want to work on our fitness, right? We want to work on being healthy and we want to work on something positive. We're out there to construct something positive. And a day doesn't go by where you don't have a negative interaction with a driver, somebody giving you a hard time for nothing. And I think about that when I get behind my the wheel of my car, and it's like, dude, like I get it. Like I have a nice car. I like to drive fast. I consider myself a more of an aggressive driver because it's fun. I have a sports car, like.
Sure.
But when it comes to precautions and being safe on the road and not putting other people's lives at jeopardy, that is a very serious consideration to make. And I think that the laws don't support uh, rider safety enough because the way I see it is the only difference behind somebody swinging a baseball bat at my face and somebody trying to swerve their car into me on the bike is the 1,500 pounds that the car weighs and not the intention behind the swinging the baseball bat.
No
That's the only
difference.
difference in my mind. And so it is terrifying to think that there is this massive weighted chunk of metal that can take your life at any minute on the road and there's no protection. That's the way I feel. And I'm not sure if you'd be the perfect person to ask, but often I'm out there and I'm saying, it's up to me to protect my life out here. Nobody else is going to save me. Nobody else is going to protect me out here. It's up to me to take all the precautions. And I think it's a sad state that we're in as a humanity in this regard.
It's terrible. I struggle with it all the time. What are the answers to these questions? I have friends that literally bring guns with them on, concealed weapons on their bicycle. It's that bad. I've had incidents myself where I've been chased down, run off the road. Um, so, I take it to heart. What's the answer from a legal perspective? Number one, the states in the US have to be much better at charging these people with crimes because they are assaults with deadly weapons.
I agree.
And, that's unfortunately why you might need a lawyer. I consider myself kind of a team lawyer for the cycling community. No one wants to go to the doctor. No one wants to see a lawyer, but I'm the team lawyer. And the reason for that
Amazing.
is we can kind of talk to the state prosecutors, the federal prosecutors, and convince them of the argument that you and I, or the conversation that you and I are just having, Zach, which is there's no difference between someone swinging a baseball bat at somebody and that vehicle. It's more like a chainsaw, quite honestly. A chainsaw
Yeah.
in Walmart, no one would just swing that thing around. You'd be
Right.
charged with a crime. And so we have to communicate that better. And unfortunately, at the local level, police officers just let these people slip by. It's a
Well,
shame.
you know what the heartbreaking thing for me is that, you know, I don't see it through necessarily through my perspective. I can defend myself. I'm a young, fit guy, grew up playing team sports. I can maneuver, I can handle my bike really well. But
Sure.
I've had different levels of how I interact with these aggressive drivers throughout my life. And of course, when I was
Mhm.
younger, it was always like, let's fight. That was always the response.
Right.
But now, somebody will come by me. This past Sunday, this 45, 50-year-old guy came by me with his mother, who might have been 75 or 80 in the passenger seat, and wanted to start screaming at me because I was merging to the left-hand lane to hit the roundabout. Totally legal move.
Of
Nothing
course.
illegal about what I did.
Right.
And he's screaming at me, telling me I need to stay in the bike lane. First of all, there's no bike lane on the road, right? So
Right.
chill, pal. And I just looked at him, and I had one of my very common interactions with people who are hyper aggressive like this right now. And I just asked them, I'm like, do you realize what you're doing right now? Like, really, really just like think about what's happening. Dude, it's a Sunday. You're out there for a nice ride. You got your mom in the passenger seat. You guys are either going to or coming from church. And I'm out here enjoying a nice Sunday workout.
Right.
And you want to get this aggressive. And when you interact with people like that, they say, wait a second, I am being ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And so it's a really hard thing to overcome. But my fear is not necessarily me, even though I'm not immune to getting hit by a car, right? By no means. But it's the lady who just started cycling who doesn't know how to handle her bike. It's the, I don't know, 7-year-old kid whose parents I pulled aside 2 days ago on the road and said, hey, you guys need to stay to the outside of this kid because when he hears a car, he's swerving towards the direction of the car because he's scared and he doesn't know any different, right? It's these
Yeah.
people on the road that don't know how to defend themselves, that aren't good bike handlers, that aren't professional riders, where when they make a mistake, they die. And
Yes.
it's those people that I feel so bad for because I know in the time that it takes us to record this podcast, somebody in America is going to be hit by a car and their life is forever going to be changed. And so I think that I would probably do an injustice if I didn't give a few formal tips to help people make good decisions when they're out there on the road, if that's okay with you.
No, that'd be great, Zach. Thanks.
Perfect. So, first and foremost is when you're out on your bike, you need to have eyes in front of you, behind you, and on both sides of your head. This means that building the ability to ride your bike in a straight line in the direction that you want to go and look around at all times is an essential skill that you need to develop in cycling. If you're not comfortable doing that, do it in your neighborhood, right? Or even practice on the indoor trainer, pedaling forward and looking around and maintaining focus on where you're going. Another really critical thing that you can do is to use lights. I can't tell you how many friends that I have had hit by tired drivers, drunk drivers, people who didn't see riders on the road. And so your biggest defense there is just to catch that driver's attention. Even if they are
Yes.
drunk or tired, like just get their attention so they're focused on you till they can get by you, right? Just don't be the thing they crash into, right? So lights on your bike. I know, guys, it can be a little dorky, but like you need the flashing, brightest, most annoying light you could possibly have on
Hell
your bike,
yes.
right?
More than
And
one. One on your bike, one on your helmet. Like have them all. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And something I'm really kind of bad for a lot of times for sponsorship reasons, but thankfully the main kit I ride in is really bright, dude. It's a bright pink kit, like you'll see me out there. Be visible and don't be so timid on the road that people will take advantage of you. And this is where personal presence, you need to command your space just like you do in every area of your life. You need to command your space on the road. If it's not safe for somebody to pass you in a tight corner, don't let them. Take up more road. Make it impossible for them to go around. Make them wait. Who cares if they're going to honk at you and yell at you? Most important thing is that you get home to your friends and to your family and maybe your children, right? That's the most important thing. Don't let them try to pass you on that tight corner because that's where you get hit. And you know what? They're in their car. They're going to be fine. And even a mild bike accident could be a broken hip or a broken leg or a fractured vertebrae in your spine or something that will have an impact on the rest of your life. So think about that when you're making those decisions on the road and commanding your space. You're not just, taking up space in a road, you are protecting your life. And so that is another really critical tip. And then, the last thing that may be a little bit more difficult for people is if you can ride with a friend, ride with people when drivers see a group of cyclists, it's a little bit easier to identify them and you're definitely going to be a little bit safer out there in a group. Although this is not a foolproof system, groups of cyclists get hit by cars as well, but it is a little bit less likely for you to get hit when you're with more than one person because you're going to be seen by these drivers more often than if you were just by yourself. And I think those are just a really few basic things that people can take right now and put into practice and hopefully keep them safe on the road.
Yeah, those are wonderful. I mean, I tell people all the time, and it takes a level of cyclist or a level of cycling and a level of being on the road, but it's always safer the great majority of time to take the lane in those situations. Because if you don't have a lot of room for someone to pass you, accidents happen. I want to reiterate something you talked about, de-escalating the situation. All of us have been young and aggressive and tried to be macho, or honestly, it just scares you when someone does something aggressive on the road. And if you're scared, what do? You're aggressive back. I find the easiest thing to tell these people is there's no reason to yell at me. And the second I
Yeah.
do that, the second I say that, they just kind of something clicks in their brain and they calm down. There was an incident that happened recently in my home state of Florida, even though I practice throughout the country, where a fire chief ran down a cyclist,
Oh my.
ran him off the road, and then pushed him to the ground after they got in a fight. And that was kind of an escalation situation. There's no reason for it because you don't know what people have. Not only do they have a car, they could have a gun, could have another weapon. And there's a lot of just crazy people out there.
So
Not
Matt,
in,
what
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I wanted to ask you what
Yeah.
happens in the case where you get hit by a car. Who's the first person you call? When do you start getting involved with a lawyer? Because I have been hit by a number of cars and never
So
actually done anything about it.
it you have to call a lawyer right away. And here's why. Okay. If an insurance company tries to settle the case with you, you will get 30 to 40% less than if you have a lawyer involved. Number one.
Wow.
Okay. That's just historically, that's statistics. The insurance companies will try to take advantage of you. You may tell them, for example, in a recorded statement, oh, I'm fine. What happens to you 3 days later? You wake up, your back's really bothering you. It may be a much bigger issue. Okay.
Mm,
And then a lot of lawyers, Zach, don't really understand what a watt is. Okay.
yeah, I
I know,
agree.
I know. Yeah. And you were just talking about it preparing for your races. You weren't able to push 300 or 400 watts during those races at certain periods of your life. And certainly, if you were involved in a car accident, that takes that level of fitness to an entirely different level. So we know at my law firm what it takes to get those watts back and how to translate that into money, quite
Mm,
honestly.
mm,
Um, in the U.S., you not only need to know the information on the insurance carrier of the person that hit you, but it's also, and let me just tell everyone who ever listens to this, it's so important that you have what's called or uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. That goes on your sports car you were talking about. Okay, so you might have liability coverage yourself of $100,000. You need to buy something as a cyclist called uninsured motorist or underinsured motorist coverage. That protects you on a bicycle. Let me repeat, that protects you on a bicycle. Okay, and in Florida, you know how much coverage you have to, and it's just one example. In Florida, you know how much liability coverage you have to have? Zero. So these people that are aggressive, that are drunk, how much coverage do you think they usually have?
zero.
Not a lot. So if you have coverage, and luckily a lot of my clients have have this coverage, they can, resolve their cases for reasonable amounts of money. How do we stop this? We stop it through, fortunately or unfortunately, however you take a look at it, big verdicts.
Mm,
When
agree.
I try cases and people see that there's a multi-million dollar verdict against an aggressive driver, they may think about twice about it. Also, I wish more people would call me, or I wish more cyclists would call not only the police but also a lawyer, even if they weren't hit, but if there was aggressive action against them. So get a license plate. Give me a call. What can you do? You can sue them for assault and battery. You can sue them for intentional infliction of emotional distress. That would that would slow it down, but most people don't do that.
But that's what needs to start happening. Like, what else do you do? Like when I go to the gym for a workout, I don't get verbally assaulted by anybody in the gym.
Of
Nobody's
course not.
running up to the squat rack calling me an effing this, effing that, do this, dude. Nobody's screaming in my face at the gym on the treadmill, right? That would
Right.
never happen. So why? I don't understand why
It-
this happens on the road. And just to your point there, I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me where somebody started screaming at me on the road. And I look at them, I'm like, why are you talking to me like that? Like, what is your problem?
right. Well, it's up to us as cyclists to realize that they're no different than an internet troll. Because how many posts have we put out there about cycling and there's someone random that says, stay off the road, right?
Yeah.
Those are the people that are on their vehicles that think they can hide behind them. But
Mm,
until we start calling the police and lawyers like myself to prosecute these cases, it's going to stay the same. It is. And I also think education, we educate people, we do seminars for people, and then we need to shine ourselves in the best light. My law firm, and I know you do this too, and a lot of cyclists do, the more we give back to our communities, show ourselves through charitable organizations, aren't assholes, quite honestly, are really good, decent people, that's just going to propel us in a different light. So I think if we try to do all those things, be good people, but also really prosecute these bad people on the road, we'll see less accidents. And they're not accidents; they're just aggressive assaults, most of them.
I would absolutely agree with that statement, Matt. I love what you're doing. And so for me, actually learning now, just now, what the process is and what kind of rights you have to, take action against all of these incidents that happens. Like you don't need to have tolerance. Like you don't deserve to go through that. There are
No,
things that you can do, and you don't necessarily need to feel alone. So that's actually really, really nice to know. And I think I wish more people knew about that because I know that if I were to go out on A1A tomorrow and have an incident with somebody that was totally not my fault, I'm calling
right.
you, man, like 100%.
Well, thanks. And you didn't ask me, but a little bit about my story. I've been a lawyer for 32 years. And then like you, I kind of got burnt out on the practice that I had. and I've been a lifelong cyclist. And I thought, how in the world? And Rich Roll is a fan of mine. I don't know if you know who he is,
Yeah,
but
of course.
yeah. And I was like, how can I do something that I want to continue my professional life and really care about? I was like, well, I could do this work. I love cycling, and it's easy for me to represent these people. And how can I take it to a different level? I've been really fortunate enough to do it in Florida and now throughout the country. I represent some cyclists in Canada. I've just finished a case in Washington State. So it's amazing to get to meet all these different people throughout the country and inform them of their rights. And the coolest part about it to me is, unfortunately, my dad passed away in 2020 from Parkinson's disease, and he
Right.
was my best friend. But
Mm.
he represented hard work, and a lot of different things to me. I give back a percentage of all the money I earn on behalf of cyclists to another cyclist, the Davis Fitty Foundation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, who he suffers from Parkinson's, and so
Yeah.
we're just spreading the good word. And as much as we can do that as cyclists, and also be aggressive when we need to be, meaning we need to report these people and get them off the road.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. I love it. So, well, yeah, it was great to learn that about you. And I hope more cyclists get the opportunity to have your support.
Thanks, Zach. I really appreciate you being on the podcast today, and hopefully we can do this again in the future.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks everybody for tuning in.